let's start with the next session, which is going to be chaired by Caroline. And this session is focused on inclusivity for transport planning and design. So, Caroline, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hi, Kathleen.
Hi.
Right.
Okay,
well, you can share the session if you want. That will save me doing it. So thank you.
Excuse me, Andrea, you are right. I apologize.
Don't worry.
It's you who is going to start the session, but I've seen Caroline in the screen, and as she's going to be participating tomorrow, I haven't made these mistakes. So sorry.
No,
thank you.
no, she's doing both days, so thank you. Welcome to this session on inclusive transport. We have 4 presentations in this session, and Kathleen, I can see, is all geared up and ready to go and start presenting. Kathleen is a researcher from the Institute of Media Technology at the Technical University of Ilmenau, and she's worked on TInnGO project as the manager of the 10 TInnGO hubs, and also runs the German hub, which is specializing in participatory planning. So over to you, Kathleen. I think we are running a little bit late, but I'm sure we'll be fine. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. I tried to catch up the time a bit. I hope that works. You can see my presentation?
Yes, I can, yes.
Okay, perfect. Now it's presentation mode and we can start.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then also welcome from my side to my presentation on gender and diversity-oriented design of social media for participation in public transport. So why we are talking about this topic, why we're focusing on this topic. So as Andrea mentioned, I'm part of the German hub from the TInnGO project, and the German hub is specializing in gender and diversity sensitive participation culture in public transport, so in the mobility sector. And due to all the COVID restrictions and the social distancing, we thought it would be a good idea to have a closer look at social media and how it's used in the mobility sector. So therefore, we also consider the multitude and diversity of user groups, that they have different needs and requirements with regard to the use of social media. In the course of this whole process, we analyzed various standards and guidelines which recommend elements for gender and diversity-oriented design of web content. So in this case, we just ask us if the social media appearance of public transport companies are designed in a gender and diversity-oriented way in order to enable as many users as possible to participate. So therefore, we identified and defined design recommendations. We had a closer look at the platform's own elements and their utilizations. We considered the means of target group-oriented design and formulation of the posts from the different providers. And we examined and evaluated a selection of social media appearances of 16 larger public transport companies across Germany in terms of the previously extracted recommendations. So just some more information on social media. So worldwide, there are about 2.5 billion users, maybe more now to the Corona situation. Here you have a short insight in the social media use of Germany due to, based on the online study of ZDF and ARD. There are some information on social media regarding the advantages and disadvantages. So advantages are definitely that it's time and location independent, the access. You have an enormous reach, which makes it possible to address potential users across national, language, class, and conventional boundaries. You have text, you can use text, image, video, and different sound formats. And of course, you have the possibility to connect and to interact. There are also disadvantages and advantages at the same time, because there are the character limitations, which is also, you probably all know this from Twitter, that you have just 140, I guess, characters that you can use. And of course, there is a format that it's given to you, so you can't do anything else and just have to use it the way the template is telling you to do it. So that could be an advantage if you just try to phrase your information in a short, precise way, but it can also be a disadvantage if there's not enough space to tell everything that's actually necessary to get the information to the users. So disadvantages are the fast pace of life and the flood of information. So yesterday you saw a post that was interesting, and today you couldn't find it anymore because it's just there are so many other posts after that you can't find it. And of course, you need the access to technology and also some sort of affinity for technology to even use social media. So what we were analyzing was that we had a look at standards, guidelines, and style guides, such as the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, Google Material Guidelines, also UNESCO guidelines on gender-neutral language, or guidelines on easy language, just as Inclusion Europe, Information for All. We had a look at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the other channels to see what kind of functionality they provide. And also on guidelines, just as the Apple Human Interface Guidelines, and of course many more. In the scope of this analysis, it was also important to have a look at the needs and requirements of the variety of user groups, because this should be the basis for shaping social media appearances in a gender and diversity-oriented manner, so that a lot of users can actively participate. When we're talking about the user groups, we are thinking of children, young people, people with impairments, seniors, people in different life situations, and all possible combinations of these different groups. So the analysis, or derived from the analysis, were 3 element categories. So the combination of user needs, of standard and style guides, and of the term gender and diversity. We created 3 element categories that you can see here. So the first one is the UI-related gender and diversity elements, the second one content-related gender and diversity elements, and the third one participation-related gender and diversity elements. Just for the quick overview, when we're talking about UI, we mean all the functionalities that the platforms are providing. So here you can see the scaling, the color, reading, subtitle, the sound, and so on. So you have different roles here, the user and the provider, because some of these functionalities you can activate or deactivate as a user and as a provider. So here just a quick overview what's possible. So as a user, you can, of course, configure what kind of color, what kind of contrast, the font, the size of the text. There are also possibilities to use assistive technology. So if you can't see blind people, then you can use the technology to know what's depicted on images. So there are some screen readers and so on that you can use. Subtitles can also be provided or activated from both sides. Subtitles are a good example of how it can go wrong if you're using automatic subtitles, because sometimes the automatic subtitle says something totally different than what's actually meant in a video from a provider. So it would be also for every time a good idea to use or to provide precise subtitles from provider side. Yeah. I think due to the time, I just leave you with every slide just some seconds that you can also read the rest. So you probably overview this one already. Then I switch to the content-related gender and diversity elements. As mentioned before, we are talking about different language styles. So it's gender neutral, gender sensitive, or the easy language, and also gender and diversity sensitive visual language. So for the visual language, that means what kind of persons are depicted on the images. What are there different? Are there gender and diversity shown? You know, so not just white male persons, but also all the others. So easy language here, short text, short sentences, just reduced number of syllables gender-sensitive languages, especially for those languages who have different endings of words for female and male persons. And of course, gender-neutral language if you're trying to avoid these different endings for women and men, word endings for women and men. The participation-related gender and diversity elements are everything that has to do with interaction, where you can comment on, where you can like something, or where you can vote or share it. So everything that really puts you in contact or gives you the possibility to react to something. So I think I don't have to tell that much about it because the most of us probably using social media and know this. So here's just to say that you can deactivate and activate it as a user, or can do some other settings on it. Here you see some examples regarding, for example, the visual language. The first picture shows a diversity and of persons, which is a good example for visual language, gender and diversity sensitive visual language. The second one shows you a short overview of some terms that you can use to avoid gender sensitive language, or to make sure that you're addressing everyone, not just men. And the third picture shows you how some of the providers are using Twitter because of these character limitations. They're just really short informations on some sort of traffic disruptions if you have an accident on the street or whatso. The first one here is kind of a bad one for assistive technology. You have a picture here with a camouflage effect, which is really not good for assistive technology, especially if it's used combined with text stickers, modules, however you want to call it. So that's not really a thing that blind people could understand or see or read, if you want it that way, with assistive technology. The second one is a good one on gender and diversity. And the third one is an example on votings via Facebook. But here it's just a humorous voting, so it had nothing to do with kind of decision-making process and mobility planning. So now some more information on our analysis that we did. We analyzed almost 650 posts. Therefore, we analyzed 5 selected weeks in the period from January 2020 until May 2021. These weeks, or this selection of weeks, followed the corona-related lockdowns and let's call it recovery phases. You can see them here. We analyzed 16 public transport companies across Germany, and due to the fact that there are so many negative results here, we decided to anonymize them. I can't spell that word, but you know what I mean. So that there can't be bad or negative conclusions associated with the companies. The analyzed appearances were on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Xing, and YouTube. We decided to incorporate LinkedIn and Xing due to the relevance of employment and education posts. That's why it's a wider range of social media platforms. As mentioned before, regarding the content-related elements, we analyzed images, videos, if there are persons depicted or not. If so, what kind of persons? We analyzed gender-sensitive language, gender-neutral language, easy language. Regarding the participation-related elements, we're counting likes, seeing what kind of likes. So Facebook has different emoticons there that you can use. Are there any comments? Are the providers replying to the comments? So is there really an interaction between provider and user? Shares, hashtags with regard to community. Are they building up? Are they connecting with other communities on Facebook to try to widen their reach? And of course, votings in terms of decision-making process and mobility planning. And UI related, did they use subtitles? Did they provide subtitles, sound, multilingualism? There are for sure some limitations of the analysis when we were trying to figure out what kind of diversity is shown in the pictures regarding user groups. If we have to say that a woman or a man on the picture is this in this age group, of course, it's just an estimation because we don't actually know. It's a bit the same with the physical disability. Sometimes you cannot always detect it visually, especially in photos and videos, it's a bit easier. So therefore, it was only possible to look for aids that indicate a disability, just like walking sticks, a wallet, a wheelchair, or whatsoever. We only analyzed a certain time period. So therefore, we cannot provide an overall picture, because if we really would analyze 1.5 years of social media posts from 16 companies over 6 platforms, that would just take a lot of time, and the project is not long enough for that. There were also some technical problems or some access problems here. One appearance couldn't be traced back to January, could just be traced back for some month. And of course, social media is a living media. Posts can be changed, new comments and likes can be added. So this is just a snapshot in time. And another limitation is that even if you think there is a connection between 2 elements, and that is the trigger for it, you can't be sure. Not always.
So, Kathleen, it's gone 2 o'clock.
Okay, then 1 minute. Just
1 minute for the results. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So, if you want to have a detailed insight in the results, so in the data that we collected, and also in the evaluations of its statistic and numbers, we are going to provide you a report at the end of the month on the observatory, so you have deeper, detailed insight here. But just for now, let me show you that it's kind of a negative picture here, because a lot of times there were just gender neutral visual, gender neutral pictures, so no persons depicted. And if there were persons depicted, then it's the usual men, white men in mid-30, mid-40. We have here some of the examples. So the first one is a good example with a women bus driver, but the last one is a bad example with just 2 young men for an employment post, which is kind of sad there. And participation related, there's not that much to say, just to say that in COVID times, the comments and replies and the interaction is a bit higher than it was before, so that's a good thing. And UI related, there are no things as picture description given to any users. So for users with disability, there is almost nothing to work with. So I think I just leave you this last slide to read it on your own, and just want to thank you for your attention. And if there's any questions, please let me know. You can contact me, and as I said before, you can see the report at the end of the month on the observatory, and maybe that's a good start for a new research, a new analysis on social media, and to change, a good impetus to change. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you, Kathleen. Sorry to rush you there. I didn't realise we were quite so behind schedule on this, but we are running in parallel. Well, we've got to finish on time. So if anybody does have any questions immediately for Kathleen, please put them in chat and we'll try and address them, or Kathleen can. We'll forward them to Kathleen anyway. Without further ado, I'd like to go on to our next speaker, which is Amanda Fernandes Ferreira. And she is presenting one of the 2 papers we have on railways and railway accessibility and infrastructure. Amanda, I believe, is a PhD student at the National Taiwan University, but she has a long line of experience as a practitioner over in Brazil as well. So I'm sure she will be drawing on that as well in her presentation. So Amanda, over to you now. Thank you. There you are. That's good. I can't hear you and I can't see your presentation. Nope. Can people from ITENE help, please?
Hi, Amanda. You should have received a pop-up to share your presentation. Have you received it?
Okay.
We can hear you now, Amanda, so that's something.
We are going to
Okay.
send it to you again if you want.
Okay, you can see my camera, right? Just the presentation.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
we have sent you a request for sharing your screen.
Shall we move on to our next speaker while you get sorted out? Because we are already running behind time.
Have you received the pop-up, Amanda? No.
Yeah, it is still not working, right?
Okay, so let's go with Paul, and we will chat with you after Paul.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, Paul, are you ready to go?
I think I'm ready. I just need the button to share my screen.
I can't help you with that. Oh, there you go. Yes, we can see your. Yep, there you go. Okay, thank you.
Fantastic.
So, sorry for that. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Paul McGhee, who is a senior designer at Coventry University, specialising in health design, but he has also been involved in the project as the lead designer and instigator of the design work with the students, and has led them to create over 50 design provocations on the Open Innovation Platform. So over to you, Paul. Thank you very much. We are short of time, so talk fast, please. Thank you.
I will go as quickly as I can. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Hello, I'm going to talk to you this afternoon about a concept of something which is bigger than transport design, and this is focused primarily on the experience of our undergraduate and postgrad interns that have worked with us over the 18 months of the project. Right, as you know, as many of you all know, TInnGO's intention was to facilitate, engage and empower. However, due to COVID-19, most of the co-design work and nearly all the face-to-face work with vulnerable groups wasn't possible. We've already published our work looking at the experience of undergraduate work in this area when they are remotely located, but the aim of this particular paper is to tease out what we learn from it by looking at our engagement with future designers. So to begin with, if we kind of frame the way we were working, so we've had the UK design team who have acted as tutors and informants, as co-design partners, working with a group of interns who have varied in size from one time to another. We've had large groups and small groups. This has run over 18 months, generating, I put 30 concept designs in here. There are many more overall designs. Some of them are found on the Open Innovation Platform, and some of them are also held on to, so we haven't published everything. And we just want to say that we didn't know at the beginning, nor did we choose to be prescriptive of which intern would look at which piece of work, but we judged their involvement based on how interested they were or how much interaction they had in the discussions. So to begin with, we met with the students. We were trying to get to know the way they would work and their communication styles. And one of the tasks we set pretty much all interns is to encourage their freehand sketching, which is literally just drawing anything, just so they have a kind of a fluid way of communicating ideas. Some did it, some didn't, and I think actually it's quite obvious to tell which ones did. Now, we wanted to create this supporting community, so we were there to support, to guide, and to give reviews in a weekly meeting, which is a critical review or a critique, or sometimes they're just called crits. This was a couple of hours at a time with 4 to 6 partners, and those times are varied depending how complex the discussions were. Now, in those discussions, in those critiques, we talked about all sorts of parts of meaning of the design and what it meant to the student, what it meant to us, what we might think it might mean in the within the framework of TInnGO. And there were lots of variations of ways of looking at design briefs. As you might imagine, a lot of personality, especially when we start talking about narratives that are posted on the platform to describe and summarize the work. But a negative of that is that the short narrative only ever covers a snapshot, a small element of the kind of information sharing we've had, the way that we've experienced it. And it's so organic, it's so huge that actually trying to capture all of that and rewrite it and present it would have just been so time consuming, we'd never actually get any of the design work done. So in essence, what we did was experience that discussion as a team with the UK design team. We used our collective experience, and we gave direction based on that experience, mostly followed that route to its conclusion. I've put there that the narrative is a tool to summarize. So I'll come back to this point in a moment, that this is a learning tool for the students, because they have to be able to capture the essence of their idea or their design really, really quickly to capture attention. And it's one of the tools we use to make sure it happens quite quickly. At the same time, we weren't there between those critical reviews. So if, for example, we were in the studio together, we'd all be talking, we'd all be seeing things happening, we might be able to shape that work. So in this instance, that didn't happen. Previously, we might have been able to do so. We did have interim meetings, and there were lots of discussion between us all the time. But if we were shown something, then we're being shown the edited highlights, the really nice sketch or the piece of work that the students were really, really happy with. So we didn't necessarily get the back of the envelope napkin sketch that was really rough and was the very beginning of the ideas. So not being there, not being co-located is clearly an issue with co-design. I think that's sort of very easy to appreciate, because in this case, the students were unable to gain really deep user insights. Equally, our wider stakeholders were unable to learn from those kind of designerly discussions, and it would have been really interesting to see how they would have played out had we had more, in this case, more actors involved. One thought is that this could be recorded, but in reality, how much of that is actually played back? So what we decided to do was use formats like the storyboards, which are on the screen at the moment, mainly because this is sort of cartoon strips that might be quite familiar. But even those, there is a question over how well they convey an idea in the context of the piece of work that's being illustrated, and maybe actually they do need explanation even then. So whizzing through a little bit, part of the remit of the paradigm shift is building up capacity for future designers and future engineers so that they are more sensitive to the subject we're talking about. So in order to fulfill this, we have worked with a number of students on a number of different ideas that have either been submitted by our colleagues from the hub, so thank you very much to all those, or subjects and topics that have been kind of evolved out of our discussions. So we try to highlight those experiences. Now, it became really clear that nearly all of the designs were service or systems that required integration with other services and systems before they could be implemented. And there are some examples here, so in terms of feedback, in terms of the sensory matters question, and also the way that we're using the pink corner in this example as a way to educate. Now, designers, I'm going to say very broadly designers, not just designers and designer students, face communication difficulties with a number of groups, and hard to reach groups are one of them. There are cultural, social, language barriers to overcome, but there's also the sense of designing for the other, which in the instance of being a young designer, designing for the other is a very difficult challenge, and it's very hard to put oneself in another position. I like the phrase walk in their shoes. I think it's very important because it's a way of trying to learn a degree of empathy with an experienced problem, and sometimes they can be very, very subtle, sometimes they're quite dramatic, but without doing this, without being able to really put ourselves into that position, then chances are our understanding of problems is actually quite shallow, and a design that is led by a shallow understanding is not going to meet user need, and ultimately the opportunity is lost. So from a mobility perspective, I think it's safe to say that both products and services in this instance might exclude certain groups. The consequence of that being that the uptake is limited, innovations don't go as far as they can, and the paradigm that we're reaching for, unfortunately, stumbles. But we also have to remember that an internship is a learning experience for the students. So in this case, it's not all about us. So we have a responsibility to guide them, to tutor, to manage expectation, and to encourage them to develop their own distinct voice or visual language. I put an example of some images up here. These are all very, very nice, and they show a different kind of format from a freehand sketch to a render sketch to a digital model. And I think it's clear to show that the students we've worked with as interns have really matured throughout the project, and it's really impressive to see how they've changed. Now, our interns have had an unusual experience. I think that's probably fair to say.
1 minute,
they
Paul.
might ultimately see this as being the way that their work became established. So we have ultimately tried to find out what that meant for them. We asked them to give us some insight on their experience, which has a number of different revealed key themes. Again, it's sensitivity and empathy and better understanding. And they've also commented on the value of multidisciplinary teams, how valuable that is for their experience, how they've achieved deeper understanding, and that this whole experience has been an eye-opener for their education, also bearing in mind they are still studying. So I'm going to skip to the very last page, because I think it's important just to get to that one. These are really, really tricky problems, and it's interesting that when we've asked student designers to look at it, they've been able to see this from a very different perspective. They've been able to go from the macro scale and zooming into problems which are related to specific solutions only when discussion around the idea made that absolutely clear. So this is bigger than transport. Assuming that answering a transport design problem with another piece of transport design is skewed. What we need is a different perspective that looks at root causes that may be informed by new societal values. Smart Ability Lens can be used to clarify design research, such as co-creation and co-design, but this needs to be at the start of any transport innovation and throughout that transport innovation, so that the designers and the wider stakeholders and everybody involved understands the usage context and the barriers. And lastly, as quickly as I can, the field of transport and transport education needs to act more in concert with other disciplines to understand its role in tackling wider societal issues. And I will say thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you. Please put some comments in chat and I will forward them to Paul. Thank you. Amanda, are you ready to go? Amanda? Yes. Amanda?
Yes.
There you are. We can still see you, not your presentation.
Okay. Now the presentation is on.
Mm-hmm.
No?
No.
It appeared to me like you want to share your screen. I clicked yes, and I don't know why it's not
Wait
working.
a minute, something's we've got Fuensis back now. Fuensis, what's going on?
Do you have 2 screens or not? Only one?
Yeah, I have 2 screens.
Oh,
Okay, so
that's
please click only one, because that probably that's the problem we have. Disconnect one of them, please.
Okay, let me try.
Shall we moved to Andrea while we sort this one out?
Yeah.
Okay, you working?
No.
Now I am just with one screen.
Okay, so we are going to send you again the permission for sharing. Okay, a pop-up should appear on your screen, so you only need to accept.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, that's it. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for this.
Okay, so thank you, Amanda. So welcome and thank you for joining us from Taiwan. I believe you may be a PhD student, but you have a lot of background in transport from Brazil. So without further ado, welcome and we look forward to your talk. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So today I will be presenting part of the research that I have been working on with my advisor, Professor Jason Chen. I will try to be as fast as I can, as I already lose some of my time. So nowadays we have been listening a lot about sustainable development. It's kind of a trending topic, and usually we heard a lot about environmental sustainability, financial and economic sustainability, but that is one dimension of the sustainability that we usually neglect. That is the social sustainability. The social sustainability is as the name implies, is focused on people and how we can build communities that can provide basic needs for people. But even when we talk about this, are we really thinking and considering all people? So just to have an overview about the data, according to the World Health Organization and United Nations, we have nowadays around 15% of people they are disabled. And from those, we have 130 million people that depend on a wheelchair. If we talk about aging societies, we have nowadays over 1 billion people that are 60 years old or more. And the World Health Organization, they estimate that 46% of the elderly people has some kind of disability. And these numbers are expected to raise. Until 2050, we expect to have 1.2 billion people with disabilities and over 2 people over 60 years old. So we need to think how we can make our cities more accessible, and personal mobility is a key factor. Personal mobility is a fundamental human right, and it is imperative for guarantee a productive and dignified life. And transportation is a key element. Transportation is at the same time a service and a physical infrastructure, and it's through transportation that people can access other basic needs such as education, healthcare, employment, leisure. So to guarantee the equity in the mobility is the same of guarantee the access of people to the city and to basic needs and human needs. And when we talk about transportation, the urban rail system, they play an important role in this scenario. Urban rail system, they are medium and high capacity transportation modes. They are reliable, easy to use. There is no communication ability required. You don't need a license like a car or any specific abilities required. And this make the urban rail system very important in cities, and also tend to be chosen by citizens that have some kind of limitation, or even like tourists. There is many studies that suggest that the tourists will tend to prefer to use urban rail system because they have fixed roads, they won't need to communicate, they can plan the trips in advance, and it's easy to navigate through the system. So isn't also because of all this that we have nowadays we have been discussing some designs that have as a central point, a central element, the urban rail systems. The transit-oriented development, the TOD, is one of them. Basically, in this design, we have high-quality public transportation stations that can be like a BRT as well, but usually are urban rail systems. And we create compact, walkable, pedestrian-oriented, and with mixed land use communities around this. So this is very important, especially for like aging societies and the people with reduced mobility, because it gives them the opportunity and the possibility to live close to a station, as the TOD include like a housing and some kind of a governmental support for housing at that areas. So it will reduce the need for travel, and also will reduce it will increase the access for all the facilities that will be close to the station. So what is the research objective? Is actually we are proposing a method, a tool, to evaluate the accessibility level of the urban rail stations for people with reduced mobility, especially considering the context of a TOD that include not only the station but also the catchment area that surround the station. And I won't go too much in detail in the methodology, but basically we have done a very deep literature review on those topics, and we checked many manuals and or the kind of material that have indicators of accessibility for station, for walking environment, for the city, for websites, and then we created the indicators. We passed them through expert evaluation. That is also, this expert is architecture and is also a person with disability herself. And then we passed those indicators through an expert panel, so we could get weights for our categories that I will show later. And we did a trial application in 2 cities in Taiwan, in Taipei, that is the capital city, and in Kaohsiung, that is also another big city that have a MRT system. So basically the method compromised 3 main categories. The first one is the provision of information about accessibility. So many studies suggest that the first step when someone, especially a person that has some mobility constraint, the first step before even considering doing a trip is to check the information online and the official information. So the first we are considering and we are proposing that the information needs to be considered as the first attribute of accessibility in any kind of system that we are evaluating. So we first propose this first category of analysis, and we create a flow chart based method to evaluate, and with this part we already published. And now we are working including these 2 more categories, that is the physical infrastructure, the station, and the surrounding, the catchment area. So for each one of the categories, we have 3 subcategories and multiple indicators. So as I said, the first category, we already have published this, and I will put the link at the end. So if anyone wants to check the publication to know more details, but basically it's we have the indicators of availability of information online in the official websites, and we're gonna have these indicators will be organized as a flow chart, and at the end you can get 5 possible outputs that will kind of classify the website according to how detailed is the information that is provided in their official website. So this is just to show how the flowchart classification method work like. Basically here we apply it and collect information of the 212 systems, urban rail systems in the world, and then we go through this flowchart in each one of them and have the results. So other than more than just a classification of the level of accessibility, we can have a clearly view of where are the problems or the points that can be improved based on the indicators we propose. So here, for example, we have 2 flowcharts of 2 different systems, and both of them we get highest score, which means that they are all the information that we listed as being important, they are available. But in one of them, you have a weak link, which means that it doesn't stop you to get the information, but it could be improved. So we expect to do this also for the station. So we're gonna have a very detailed assessment to get informations based on to see if the station is complying with the local regulations. So in terms of the size of the elevator, the information that is provided, the location of restrooms, everything according to what is a local regulation about accessibility. And then also from the catchment area of the station, we're going to do the same. And we're going to, we collect some data already, but it's still in process. We still will collect some more stations. So basically, this is just an example of what we expect to have. We expect to have at the end some map showing where are the accessible points and the level of accessibility of this particular point. So at the end, you're gonna be able to plan your trip knowing exactly where are the accessible paths, or if there is an elevator, but maybe it's not wide enough. So you're gonna have this level of detail. So what we expect as the outcomes when we finish this study, we're gonna have objective accessibility score. So we are the indicators will get a value, and we have the weight for the categories and subcategories. So at the end, we're gonna be able to have a score that will vary from 0 to 100 or for 0 to 1. And we're gonna have the visual representation of the accessibility, the flow chart for the part of the information, and the maps for the overview of the station accessibility. We will also get a detailed list of the accessible elements and the current accessibility status. And based on the results, we're going to also be able to see where are the weak links, where we need to improve, and we can see exactly, we can suggest what can be improved. And this is particular, we believe that this is particularly good. Of course, the study have a lot of limitations. We are considering just mobility constraints, like physical mobility constraints. We are not considering blind people or deaf people or people with other kind of disability. We have the intention to include other to make it more comprehensive in the future, but for now we set the scope, introduce the people with the mobility constraint in this sense, and we believe that it's that focus on the TOD can give us the chance to look at this matter in a way that we can, if we can improve the whole city at once, at least we can have the TOD as a important seed where we can have this station in this area, and we can already have a very significant gain in the accessibility of person to all the service and the housing, everything that is planned under the TOD design.
Right, thank you, Amanda. Can you stop there, please? Thank you. We are running very late. Okay, thank you for your contribution. And I'd now like to quickly introduce our final speaker for this session, Andrea Guerini, who is going to be talking about, what's going to be talking about? Don't know. Railway system accessibility, probably. Inclusive railway infrastructures and transport services, our colleague from the Diamond project. So Andrea already spoke earlier on today, and I welcome you to this final session of this part of the program. Okay, over to you, Andrea. I'm sorry we're running a little bit late, but feel free to carry on into our tea break. So that's fine.
Well, I will try to sum up the presentation since we are running out, so we have time for the Q&A session. And can you confirm you see my screen, right? So I can go ahead.
That's fine. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, cool. So for those already participating in this morning session, we have I have introduced GIS analysis aimed at selecting a relevant sample of docking station for the use case 3 of the Diamond project. And this presentation is focused instead of the first use case, railway, transport infrastructure. Part of the slide are focused again on the GIS, just to make you clear the entire workflow and the methodology. But I want to focus on one of the methodological tool we apply for collecting data, which is an ad hoc design observation checklist. And the tool was designed in collaboration with the transport operator of the city of Warsaw, the TDM, which is also partner of the consortium, and FGC, which is the Ferrocarril de la Generalitat de la Catalunya, again partner of the consortium of the project. And so I can, let's say, skip the first part of the presentation to save some time, and just an overlook at the Diamond methodology for collecting data. So use case 1 needs and expectation of women as users of the railway transport services in the province of Barcelona and in the metropolitan area of Warsaw, trying to obviously to scale up the result of the project to the entire European region. So first, we conducted a thematic analysis focused on the most relevant and recent scientific contribution, focused on the needs of women as users of railway infrastructures. And then we apply GIS analysis of location-based data to select a relevant sample of stations, those which are characterized as positively accessible or limited in terms of accessibility, level of accessibility for women. And for those stations which were selected, we went deep using different tools for collecting data. And today I will present you an observation checklist focused on the fairness characteristics defined through the thematic analysis. So this is the results of the review. As you can see, we have 3 main factors: accessibility of the service, which I think is all these 3 factors were really well introduced by our keynote speaker. So accessibility of the service is in terms of, for example, service availability and efficiency, wayfinding information, travel focus, but also the design of the infrastructure itself. So let's say the observation checklist was focused on some of these fairness characteristics, and I would say above all the design of the infrastructure. So the observation was conducted on the selected station. So you can see here the workflow of the GIS analysis. We combine very different location-based open data to select the station which were relevant for the project. And the observation was meant to collect data on the field. So the staff of ZTM and the staff of FGC in Barcelona were directly involved in collecting data 2 times per day to have, let's say, access to data in the daytime and in the nighttime, for example, regarding the level of lighting system in the station, just to give you an example, which is linked to the perception of safety and security for women. And so let's say the data collection procedure was based on a sheet, a tabular structure sheet to take notes, but also some pictures, some footage was performed during the observation to track record. And most importantly, the observation was let's say defined as focus on 4 sub scenarios within the same infrastructure. So the area surrounding the station, the concourse level of the station, the platform level of the station, and the carriage. And so now I'm going to show you the result of the analysis and the structure of the checklist, which are focused on at these 4 levels. So for example, this is let's say a screenshot from the checklist. So for the level 1 fairness characteristics, accessibility of the service, level 2 service availability and efficiency, 2 of the items comprising the checklist were add the alternative shared mobility service for last mile connection. And in this case, the observer as just to take note as a yes or no option. But for other items of the checklist, there was a, let's say, a qualitative assessment of the area from 4 maximum, let's say, degree to 1. So, for example, again, level 1, accessibility of the service, wayfinding, how much clear and timely are the tab updates through announcement in multiple language. So, in this case, for the concourse level and platform level, the coder should take notes from 4 to 1. Then there were like items regarding, for example, signposting for wayfinding, both vertical and horizontal, information regarding positive environmental contribution, or regarding the ticketing option, the presence and the availability of ATMs, ticket machine, ticket office, and alternative save point. So, I mean, let's say the very general comment from the GIS analysis, we went on the field collecting data regarding the accessibility of the station for all, with, let's say, with a focus on the needs of women. And I mean, it was truly interesting to collect the results. And now I can show you a couple of slides regarding again the results. And from a first of a look, the interesting point here is that the GIS allow us to cluster this sample of 10 stations, half of them positive and half of them negative, roughly speaking, and the observation confirm these main characteristics of the station. So you can see in green bars, you can see the station positively characterized by their characteristics through GIS. So the first quantile distribution of the station, and the red bars the negative station, let's say. So the results of the observation were normalized from 0 to 1 to get compared, and you can see let's say we can go in detail. For example, if you look at the concourse level, so the main entrance of the station, design of the infrastructure, the universal design, fairness characteristic, you can see easily that the station which were selected as positively and accessible have a positive, let's say again, results in contrast with the negative, let's say the negatively selected station. And again, we also analyze the platform level and the carriage level. And for example, for some of the trail, let's say, are comprised in many lines of the railway infrastructure. Some trains are newer, some other older. So we were trying also to evaluate the level of crowding, let's say the thermal comfort within the carriage, and again the travel and wayfinding information provision. So all these characteristics were selected through the thematic analysis, and the workflow allow us to go in depth. The results of both GIS and observation were then included in the Bayesian network model for analyzing both the, let's say, the indexes defined for GIS and the normalized results from observation as attribute of each station. And as our final remarks, the data collection phase continued with different tools and techniques. So during the, let's say, we perform survey questionnaire interviews with passengers, so through the UASI questionnaire, but also we collect data from Twitter to know which were the, let's say, the sentiment analysis from the tweets in the surrounding of each station. And again, I'm very open for a further discussion and question by email. But if you want to know more, I mean, these are the 3 main references I want to highlight you to. They are open access, so you can grasp even more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm not sure whether we should just have a tea break or go on to a question and answer session. And at the moment, you're the only face I can see. So maybe everyone, oh no, here we go. Hi, Paul. So we're waiting for Amanda and Kathleen. And any questions that have popped up. The only questions that I could see in the chat were from myself, so and I'm sure we don't really need to deal with those. Andrea, what was the difference between your two stations? I might have missed it. So you had the Q1 and the QS stations. Were one more central and one more rural?
Not really. The Q1 and Q5 refers to the
okay.
is the, let's say, the quantile frequency distribution of value. So we rank the station through a series of open data, which allow us to build up free indexes. So the, let's say, Q1 stations are those which has like higher density distribution of inhabitants, let's say, regarding socio-demographic index, or the one which characterizing the surrounding by the availability of more public transport services, or a land use mixed, and the distribution of point of interest. Say there are richer and poorer stations in terms of city characteristics.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Paul, a quick question for you. I was involved in a lot of the discussions with the designers, but my main problem is, how do we show people what the richness is, and how do we disseminate all the information that was in those sessions?
I think it's a fair question, because the work that's shown is just the very tip, and there is a huge amount of idea generation and a selection, a process of selecting things to actively not pursue in order to get something which could be communicated. And part of the purpose of following that process was that we were trying to present things in a way that could be communicated in a non-designer, non-tech way. But in doing so, we tend to lose a lot of the richness. So I've been thinking about this as well for quite some time. And I think the narrative is really useful. And bearing in mind again that this was a learning experience for some very young designers, the narrative and a more detailed narrative through each step, and kind of an iterative narrative and a visual narrative that goes with it, would be a really interesting way of showing what we did, why we didn't do it, why we changed our mind.
Yeah.
But doing it in a way which is really easy to access. I think there is something in there, but it's a big piece of work in its own right just to do that.
Yeah, I think colleagues probably don't understand. What was supposed to happen was that our co-design work was supposed to happen in each of the hubs with members of the local community and with the non-designers in the TInnGO team, so we could spread around richer pictures and more knowledge about the problems that real users had with the design or with the transport system. And we didn't have that. We just had to share this within the UK team, so it didn't get disseminated across the wider group. Amanda, thank you very much for your work. Who's going to be using it? So are the stations involved and the local communities involved with the signposting and the equalization of the areas around the station? So you've mapped everything out in terms of where the problems are. Who's the end user for this information?
Actually, the main idea is to propose this tool that can be applied to any city. So we believe that this can be used by the governments and the decision makers. We're gonna have, for example, a meeting with the Ministry of Transportation here, where we can share some of those results. Taiwan is very interested to implement the TOD stations, to make the stations already like TOD design. So it's a very good timing to discuss about these issues, especially because Taiwan will be soon one super aged society, like similar to what Japan is already. So those issues are going to hit the country soon. So this is something that people are interested in. And we also believe that once we have this tool, and this tool is meant to be easily adjustable to be applied in other cities. So you can have, for example, a group with the people with disability from that city and see if any adjustment in the tool is needed, so you can catch the level of accessibility considering the particular needs of that community. And with the data, we can also use this data to feed apps like the mobility as a service, which is already being also discussed here. How can we provide personalized service for people with reduced mobility? And if we have those information added in this kind of app or some kind of online platform, this can be used for also can be useful for the users to plan their trips and so on. So it's we believe they can be used by different people.
Okay, right. Thank you very much. Francis has told me there's no questions from the audience, so I suggest we grab a quick cup of tea and rejoin the main session at whatever time it is, 3 o'clock. Please note that there are parallel sessions happening then.